For 22 years, I sat across from patients in an office that smelled like recycled air and institutional hope. And I told them the same thing every urologist, every internist, every primary care physician in this country was trained to say: your bladder is the problem. I'm Dr. Emma Whitmore, a functional and integrative medicine physician, and I walked away from conventional practice not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood that the system I was operating inside was not designed to find the actual source of suffering. It was designed to route patients toward diagnoses that had corresponding billing codes and corresponding pharmaceutical solutions. I followed the guidelines, I ran the cystoscopies, I prescribed the anticholinergics and the alpha blockers, I sent people to pelvic floor therapy. And I watched them come back 6 months later, exhausted, still waking up 3 and 4 times a night, still being told by every specialist they consulted that this was simply what aging looks like. It wasn't until Case File 2018, a 67-year-old retired postal worker from rural Ohio, a man I'll call RT, that I finally understood what was actually happening inside the bodies of the people I was supposed to be saving. RT had no prostate pathology. His urinalysis was clean. His bladder capacity was normal, and he had been sleeping in 2-hour intervals for 4 years. What I'm about to share with you is not on any pamphlet your urologist hands you. It is not in the standard of care guidelines. It is buried in circulatory physiology research that gets published and then quietly ignored because there is no patent on it, no pill to prescribe, no sales representative pushing it to physicians over a catered lunch. And every single night that passes without this information is a night your body is running a process it didn't have to run, a process that is stealing your sleep, degrading your cognition, and accelerating damage that goes far beyond how many times you visit the bathroom. Case File 2018. A 67-year-old retired mail carrier from southeastern Ohio. He came to me after 4 years of nocturia, waking 2 to 4 times per night. His chart was a monument to the conventional approach. 2 urology consults, 1 failed trial of tamsulosin, 1 failed trial of oxybutynin, a bladder diary his physician reviewed for 90 seconds, and a note in the margin that read, age-appropriate lower urinary tract symptoms. He did everything right, took every medication, attended every follow-up, and yet by the time I met him, his sleep architecture, visible on a consumer-grade tracker his daughter had bought him, showed no continuous sleep period longer than 90 minutes. His physician's explanation was expected progression, normal aging, adjust the medication. What no one had done, not once in 4 years, was look at his legs, not at pathology, at fluid. RT's calves were holding fluid every single day, not edema in the clinical sense. Not pitting edema that would prompt a heart failure workup, just the quiet, invisible, completely unaddressed accumulation that happens to virtually every adult who sits or stands for the majority of their waking hours. And when he lay down at night, that fluid moved. It redistributed. It entered the systemic circulation and arrived at his kidneys, which did exactly what kidneys are designed to do. They filtered it and turned it into urine. His bladder was never the problem. His bladder was just the last stop on a journey that started 12 hours earlier in his lower legs. Drop a 1 in the comments right now if you or someone you love has been told their nighttime urination is just a bladder problem, because what I'm about to show you about what is actually happening in your body while you sleep has been staring medicine in the face for decades, and the protocol to address it costs nothing and requires no prescription. I'm not going to give you that protocol yet. Before I do, you need to understand the full mechanism, because without that understanding, the solution will seem too simple to take seriously, and you will dismiss the most effective intervention your body has ever been offered. Here is what is actually happening inside your body right now, and I need you to understand this mechanism completely before we talk about what to do about it. Your venous and lymphatic systems are not passive pipes. They are active return infrastructure, and like any infrastructure, they depend on mechanical force to function correctly. Think of your lower legs as the foundation drainage system of a large building. When that building is constructed correctly, water and fluid move through designed channels, upward and outward, efficiently cleared and processed. But when the drainage pumps lose pressure, when the workers responsible for pushing fluid up through the system stop being activated, fluid backs up in the foundation. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't cause immediate structural collapse. It simply accumulates quietly in the lowest accessible space day after day until the volume becomes large enough to cause a cascading problem somewhere else entirely. That is your calf. That is what is happening in your lower legs every single day you sit at a desk, every hour you spend in a car, every evening you spend in a recliner. The calf muscle group, specifically the soleus and gastrocnemius, functions as a secondary circulatory pump. When those muscles contract rhythmically, they compress the deep venous network of the lower leg, propelling blood and interstitial fluid upward against gravity through a series of one-way venous valves. A 2016 analysis published in the Journal of Vascular Surgery examining venous return mechanics in sedentary adults found that individuals who spent more than 6 hours per day in seated or standing stationary positions showed measurably reduced venous return velocity compared to those with regular ambulatory activity, and that reduced return velocity correlated directly with measurable increases in nocturnal urine output. That study received almost no mainstream coverage. It was published, it was peer-reviewed, and it was functionally invisible to every clinician writing anticholinergic prescriptions the following Monday morning. Drop a 2 in the comments if your doctor has never once, not once, asked you how much time you spend sitting during the day as part of evaluating your nighttime urination, because that question is the most diagnostically relevant question in this entire conversation, and it is almost never asked. Case File 2021, a 71-year-old retired school teacher from coastal South Carolina. She came to me after a urology workup that found nothing actionable. No infection, no prolapse, no overactive bladder pattern on urodynamic testing. She was waking 3 to 5 times per night and had been for 3 years. Her physician had tried 2 medications. Neither worked. When I asked her to describe her typical day, she told me she spent approximately 9 hours seated, reading, watching television, working on her computer. Her legs, she said, felt heavy by evening. Not painful, just heavy. That heaviness is not a sensation to dismiss. That heaviness is your body's only polite way of telling you that your foundation drainage system is backed up and the fluid has nowhere to go, but wait for gravity to reverse. When ML lay down at night, an estimated 300 to 500 milliliters of interstitial fluid that had been quietly pooling in her lower legs across 9 hours of sedentary activity, redistributed into her systemic circulation within the first 60 to 90 minutes of recumbency. Her kidneys received that fluid load and responded exactly as kidneys should. She was not waking up because her bladder was broken. She was waking up because her kidneys were working perfectly, processing a flood of fluid that should have been moved hours earlier. Now, I want you to understand the second mechanism, because this one is almost never discussed even in integrative medicine circles, and it is the reason why simply elevating your legs is not always sufficient on its own. Your lymphatic system has no pump at all. Unlike your cardiovascular system, which has the heart driving constant pressure, your lymphatic network moves fluid exclusively through 3 mechanisms: skeletal muscle contraction, respiratory pressure changes, and smooth muscle contractions in the lymphatic vessel walls themselves. Think of your lymphatic vessels like a series of flexible drainage conduits running alongside the foundation of that building. Conduits that rely entirely on the building's mechanical activity to keep fluid flowing. When the building goes still, the conduits go still. When the conduits go still, fluid accumulates in the interstitial spaces, the spaces between your cells, and it stays there until mechanical activity resumes or until postural change triggers redistribution. A 2019 study published in Frontiers in Physiology examining lymphatic return dynamics during prolonged sedentary periods found that lymphatic clearance from the lower extremities decreased by 44% after 4 consecutive hours of seated inactivity. 44%. That is not a marginal finding. That is nearly half your lymphatic drainage capacity, eliminated by the simple act of sitting still for an afternoon, which describes the daily reality of the majority of adults over 60 in this country. This research was published. It was replicated in a secondary cohort, and it has been completely absent from every clinical guideline on nocturia issued since. Put a 3 in the comments if you are starting to understand that the problem your body has been carrying may have had nothing to do with your bladder all along, because the protocol I am about to give you does not target your bladder at all. It targets your foundation. It targets your drainage infrastructure. And it works in a way that no prescription your urologist can write is designed to work, because it addresses the source, not the symptom. We are almost there. But before I give you the exact sequence, you need to understand one more piece: the role of your autonomic nervous system in either accelerating or reversing this fluid accumulation, because without that piece, the protocol is only half as effective as it needs to be. The protocol I am giving you now is specific, it is sequenced, and the sequence matters because you are not just moving fluid. You are working with 3 overlapping biological systems simultaneously, and if you activate them in the wrong order, you leave the majority of the benefit on the table. Begin this protocol 60 to 90 minutes before you intend to sleep, not immediately before you get into bed, because the fluid redistribution you are trying to prevent begins within the first 30 minutes of lying down, and you need to get ahead of it. The first component is the seated calf pump, and here is exactly why it works. Your soleus muscle, the deeper of the 2 primary calf muscles, contains a disproportionately high density of slow-twitch muscle fibers and is threaded with a venous network so dense that physiologists sometimes call it the peripheral heart. When you activate it with controlled rhythmic contraction, you are not simply improving circulation in a vague, general sense. You are mechanically compressing the deep venous plexus of the lower leg and driving accumulated fluid upward through a series of one-way valves toward the femoral vein and ultimately toward the right side of the heart. Sit upright in a chair with both feet flat on the floor. Lift both heels simultaneously while keeping your toes grounded. Hold the contraction for 2 seconds at the top. Lower with control. Repeat this for 15 to 20 controlled repetitions and do not rush it. The compression phase at the top of the movement is where the venous valve engagement happens, and if you bounce through the repetitions, you bypass the mechanism entirely. That is the mistake I watch patients make for years, performing the motion without the contraction, getting movement without the pump. The research-supported dose is 15 to 20 repetitions at a deliberate 2-second hold, performed once as part of this pre-sleep sequence. Drop a 4 in the comments if you're going to try this tonight, because tonight is the right time to start, not after you have thought about it for a week. The second component is manual calf drainage, and the form is everything. Cross one leg over the opposite knee so the calf muscle is fully unloaded and relaxed. A contracted calf muscle resists manual compression, and you will move almost no fluid if you skip this step. Place both hands around the lower portion of the calf near the heel and apply firm, consistent pressure as you stroke upward toward the back of the knee. Upward only. This is not negotiable. Your venous valves and your lymphatic collecting vessels are oriented to accept fluid moving toward the heart. Manual pressure applied downward does not just fail to help, It actively works against the one-way valve architecture your body depends on. Think of your lymphatic vessels here like a series of load-bearing conduits built with directional gates. Those gates open in one direction, force fluid the wrong way, and you are not draining the foundation, you are flooding it. Perform 5 to 7 firm upward strokes on each leg, followed by 3 to 4 broad palm sweeps from ankle to knee. Switch legs and repeat. This takes approximately 90 seconds per leg, and the cumulative effect on interstitial fluid volume in the lower extremities is measurable. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies, examining manual lymphatic techniques in adults with lower limb fluid retention, found a 38% reduction in measurable limb circumference after a single session of correctly performed upward manual drainage. 38% in one session. That is not a long-term accumulation effect. That is immediate mechanical clearance of fluid that was sitting in your foundation, waiting to flood your kidneys at midnight. The third component is the one most people skip because it looks too simple to be serious, and it is the component that determines whether the first two components hold through the night or whether your autonomic nervous system undermines the entire protocol within 20 minutes of lying down. Elevate your legs above the level of your heart, either against a wall, supported on stacked pillows, or in any position that places your feet higher than your chest. And while in that position, practice 4 cycles of the 4 to 7, 8 breathing pattern. Inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, exhale completely through the mouth for 8 seconds. This breathing pattern is not relaxation theater. The extended exhale phase creates a measurable increase in vagal tone. It activates the parasympathetic branch of your autonomic nervous system through direct mechanical stimulation of the vagus nerve via diaphragmatic pressure changes. Your autonomic nervous system directly regulates the contractile activity of your lymphatic vessel walls. When you are in sympathetic dominance, stressed, activated, running the low-grade neurological alert state that most adults over 50 maintain as a chronic baseline, your lymphatic smooth muscle contractions slow. Your lymphatic drainage slows with them. The fluid stays. The leg elevation combined with vagal activation does 2 things simultaneously. Gravity assists the return of residual interstitial fluid toward the body's core, and the parasympathetic shift restores lymphatic vessel contractility, so your system continues draining passively after you move into horizontal sleep. 4 cycles is the minimum. 6 is optimal. After completing this sequence, practice double voiding before bed, urinate, wait 2 to 3 minutes without straining, and attempt to void again. The physiological basis for this is straightforward. Your bladder does not always empty to maximum capacity on the first void, and the residual volume that remains becomes the first trigger for waking when redistributed fluid arrives at your kidneys 20 minutes into sleep. You are removing the hair trigger. Now, when your doctor tells you this is not evidence-based, ask them to pull the 2016 Journal of Vascular Surgery analysis on venous return velocity and nocturnal urine output. Hand them the Frontiers in Physiology lymphatic clearance data. Most physicians, when they see peer-reviewed data in front of them, will engage with it honestly. If they dismiss it without reading it, that tells you something important about where their information is coming from. If you are concerned about cost, this protocol costs nothing. What costs money is the next decade of interrupted sleep, the cognitive decline that follows it, and the cascade of downstream conditions that poor sleep accelerates, conditions that do have expensive pharmaceutical solutions, which is precisely why the inexpensive mechanical one never made it into the guidelines. Send this to someone right now, not later, right now, who has been told their nocturia is just their age. You know someone. Text it. You have the ability to change one person's next 10 years of sleep with a single message sent tonight. Subscribe to this channel because YouTube's algorithm suppresses medical content that challenges pharmaceutical narratives without engagement signals. Your subscription is how this research reaches the people who need it. I have put together a complete written version of everything covered today, exact sequencing, the full research citations, the forms and timing. It is called the Nocturnal Reset Protocol, and the link is in the description. Bookmark this video and watch it again with someone you trust, because the second watch is where the mechanism fully clicks, and when it clicks, everything about how you approach the hours before sleep changes permanently. You now understand your own circulatory and lymphatic biology better than the majority of physicians who will see patients tomorrow morning. That is not an accident. That is what happens when the research is followed wherever it leads instead of wherever it is funded to go. The window to address this is real. Your body is waiting for the right input. Do not wait another night to give it.